Hello, everyone. I was going to say, I see Nadia is joining me here. I was going to say, we're just waiting for Nadia and Nettie to join. But it's so great to finally meet you.
Hi,
so everyone knows, we've only ever interacted on Instagram.
Yes.
We'll talk about today.
Most people I talk to, I only see through Instagram. So it's actually really funny to see people virtually now.
I was going to say, yeah, because I know so me and Nettie met a few years back. So that's how we made that initial connection. But I've seen so much of the work that you and Nettie have done, which is one of the questions a few people wanted to ask about. And I was like, oh my God, the two of them together would be the ideal space.
What's crazy is that Nettie and I have never seen each other in person, but when we do, it's going to be a party.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.
I will tell you, me and Nettie had met once in person before we decided to gallivant across Europe together when we were doing an internship. So I can guarantee you're not wrong.
Is my volume good?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay.
So it is 2:00. I know people are probably just rolling out of the last sessions that I know we're just wrapping up. But just before we begin, as we've said all day, we are asking that our audience members are respectful of our presenters. So please do not request to share your audio and your video, especially while their presentation is going on. It's disrespectful and distracting to them as well. If at the end of it, at the end of this, since this is more of a conversational area, there will be space. Yes, thank you, Sarah, for posting that in the chat. So as you join, it is in the chat, our guidelines. If you have any questions that you want to ask, you can either pop them in the chat or over in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure to get to them at some point. But honestly, you're in for such a treat. You're going to learn so much, and you'll have a great time. So before I guess start with the questions and everything, I'll just do this really brief introduction. So Nadia attended Rowan University for her undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering and her master's at the University of Delaware. She is currently a third-year doctoral student in biomedical engineering, and she studies the use of nanoparticles for maternal fetal health applications. Specifically, she uses nanoparticles to treat bacterial vaginosis in pregnant mice. Aside from research, she is passionate about increasing representation in STEM through social media and mentoring the next generation of scientists, which you can find her on Instagram. While you guys are doing this, I know you all have your phones in your hand at BME Queen, so you can see what we're talking about as we go along. Now I'm going to move to Nettie. So Nettie was born and raised in Lithonia, Georgia, which is in DeKalb County, where she attended Arabia Mountain High School. She received her BS in biochemical engineering from the University of Georgia in 2018, and she is now a third-year biomedical engineering PhD student at Georgia Institute of Technology and Emory University in Atlanta. Her research focuses on using 3D printing strategies to regenerate tissues for defects that are in the ear and the nose. And she is interested in pursuing science policy to help develop more programs for K through 12 STEM education with a primary focus on minority students. So thank you again for being here today. And I know that was a super quick introduction. So if either of you would like to add anything about yourselves before we get started, the floor is yours on that.
I don't think so. I'm sure we'll get into it. So
Right. Yes.
So we gathered some questions from the organizing committee just to get us started. But one of the biggest things that came up was why you decided to pursue a graduate degree and both of you a doctoral degree. So if you both could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
You want to go first? You go first, Nettie.
So for me, this journey kind of started when I was a kid. My parents were really big on figuring out what you like at an early age. And I think that's kind of what me and India and Maggie kind of want to pursue, getting younger people involved in STEM. So when I was a young kid in my county, they had these expos you go to learn about science. We had a Fernbank Science Center. We'd look at the stars and do fun little alginate beads or spinach chromatography experiments. And I saw oh, I like science. I did a business program too, but I didn't like it at all. And I was like, you know what? Science is my route. So they really said, okay, she likes science. Let's focus on that. So they ended up letting me go to a high school that was focused on STEM education. And with that, a lot of teachers, we had to do like these science projects. I think they saw my passion. So I was able to do some research programs in high school. And I actually got my first publication out of high school. So I did food science. And it was really fun. And I knew by then, like, I want to be a doctor. Like, I want to be a researcher and a scientist. And I think one thing that happened in 10th grade, I had a white male professor for for chemistry. I love chemistry. And I was his best student. And I was like, I want to be a researcher. And he said, you smile too much to be a researcher. And I was like, what does that even mean? And since then, my mom was like, the best revenge is success. So I was like, I'm going to be the best researcher I can be. And so I went to undergrad. I started research, maybe not 10th grade, my sophomore year. And then I did some RUs. That's how I met Maggie here. Mm-hmm. We did an international RU in France. So I worked on some biomaterials, and that just boosted my love for science. And I was like, yeah, for sure, I want to do some research at the doctoral level just to learn and even to get other skill sets. Because the PhD isn't just about the science. It's about learning how to manage teams and everything else. And my interest is science policy because I do want to make sure there's programs and money in place to make sure more K-12 students know about the opportunities through STEM. And so that's why I'm here. I love science. I'm a nerd. And I just want to make sure other people can have that same passion, or at least know it's an avenue for them to achieve. Thank you.
Wow. So my story is completely different. So I was actually never interested in science. I actually really loved makeup when I was in high school. Like that was my thing. The makeup gurus were starting to be a big thing on YouTube, and that's what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to be a makeup guru. Like that's what I want to do. But when I was in high school, my dad he knew that I was good at math and science, and I was a straight A student and all those things. So he was kind of the person that told me that, chemical engineers are people who formulate makeup. And I was like, oh, well, then sign me up. I'll do that. That sounds cool. Because what better job is there than to play in makeup all day? That sounds awesome. So from there, I was interested in being a chemical engineer. And for college, I had applied to a bunch of chemistry programs and I didn't get in. But I still went to Rowan because I wanted to play field hockey and be an engineering major. So I ended up reapplying after my first year into the program, and I again got denied from chemistry. But they were like, you should maybe try out this biomedical engineering thing. And I was like, all right, did a quick Google, and I was like, all right, I'll just try it out and see what happens. So I actually struggled a lot throughout undergrad. And because of it, I was like, there is no way I'm ever going to grad school. This is terrible. Why would anyone do this major? This is so hard. And then when I was a junior, we kind of did these design courses, and I started to do I would call it a casual form of research. So I was the first student in my advisor's lab, and he really held my hand through a lot of the techniques and learning how to do stuff. But once he stopped the hand holding, I realized that I could do it on my own. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this. But because I was working in the orthopedic based lab, it was a lot of 3D printing, a lot of mechanical testing. I was like, I'm not really interested in this. I want to do something in drug delivery. So I was like, why don't I just go to grad school and get some quick experience in doing drug delivery based projects. And then I'll go on and be a bench scientist. So since I've started grad school, I realized that I actually don't like doing science at the bench. And that I'm so much more interested in science communication, which is what I do on social media. So I found a way to combine the two and, make bench science more interesting, in my opinion. But yeah, so I am completely different. Again, I don't expect myself to be a bench scientist when grad school is over. So yeah, I've kind of stepped away from my initial thoughts.
Honestly, I felt that so much. I learned during the pandemic, I was like, I am not a bench scientist. I was like, this is not ideal.
Not for life, no. No.
For now, but forever, it can't happen.
Right.
So you mentioned a little bit about this in your answer, but I was gonna bring this up after I asked something. But since you mentioned like having to like reapply into like the program and everything and not having success like the first time around. Something that brought your accounts originally to the attention of the planning committee was a video that you guys posted on your Instagram accounts, which I think you guys did Instagram Reels, where you talked about some of your failures along the way, and you were like, "Look at me now," which I personally like. I've watched it like 12 times, if I'm being honest. But like that's not the point. So, would you mind discussing like how I guess like you got like the motivation to move past some of those failures just so that like you could keep moving forward and like figuring out like what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I feel like this is an ongoing process. So when I came up with the idea of the video, I was like, I need to get other people involved because people need to know that, scientists don't get it right the first, second, third, eighth time. So I asked Nettie and, all the other women that were in the video, and I'm like, hey, would you be willing to share this kind of thing? And I definitely didn't expect it to blow up like it did. So I'm like pretty happy that, people related to it. But I think what I've started to do recently, like when I encounter like what I would consider a failure or like a setback, is kind of think of how far I've come thus far. Like I didn't wake up and be like, I'm going to be a scientist today. Like I had to take, different steps to get there. And the path was not linear at all. But for me, reflection is incredibly important for me to realize where I'm going and where I want to be. And I reflect like almost every day. And now that it's nice outside, I go for walks and do it all the time. But it's really big for me to just like see where I was a year ago. Like a year ago from today, I didn't even have BME Queen. So, to see how far like my like profile has just come in, less than a year is so crazy to me. And to see like how far I've come as a graduate student, like now I'm considered an older graduate student in my lab, is kind of crazy to me. But it like helps with like that like confidence boost a little bit to be like, oh wow, like I actually can do this. And this entire time that I've been working hasn't been for nothing.
Yeah, I have to give my kudos to India because she came with the idea and I was just like, this is so smart. End up having random people that I haven't talked to, or message me, Nettie, I saw your TikTok. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even have a TikTok. So it spread very fast. And I think because it's just real. I don't know if you remember, India, one of our earlier posts, I think a couple of us like in the Black Science Network, we posted like our biggest failures. That was like my biggest like post, because it was like, oh, this scientist who's a 30-year PhD student also failed classes and they get accepted to all these grad schools. And I'm like, yeah, I did not have a great GPA, like a great, applying to grad school GPA. It was definitely fine for an engineer, above a 3.0. But it just keeps people understanding that we're not perfect. I laugh with my advisor because I'm like, if something happens the first time and it's like right, I'm like, I actually don't believe it in lab. I'm like, run it back again. You know this, Maggie. Like if it's something with your polymer synthesis, you like, let me check again because that shouldn't have been right the first time. So yeah, we all have our pitfalls. I know a lot of mine were in undergrad. Like classes weren't easy for engineers, getting C's and D's. I had to get personal tutors to make sure I got through school. And so I think it just helps being transparent with people. So I think a lot of people see scientists as, oh, they're just these perfect people that know everything, but we don't. I keep my Google open right beside me. I keep all my papers to the left of me, and I use my resources. I ask my advisors, I need help. I'm stuck. I try not to stay stuck for too long because I'll be working on a code. My advisor fixes it in 5 seconds, and I was spending 2 weeks on it. So it definitely humbles you and helps you learn how to ask for help. And I think by showing ourselves to the world, like India's brilliant idea, I think just helps people see I can do that too. I might have stumbled or didn't pass the GRE the first time. I'm gonna take it again because look at all these women that made it this far. So I think our failures just really help us out in the end. Just learn more and just do it better next time. And I think your point about what can happen in a year. We both started pages. I think like April, May pandemic, time, and just seeing where we are now, like impacting so many girls' lives, women and I guess men too. Like looking at our science, looking at our what you doing today. So I think we're making science look fun, which I think is the goal here. Just science is for everybody. It's not just this elite club.
I was gonna say, I know me and you, Nettie, were texting like the day before you launched like Nettie's Science Tea, and I was
Yeah.
like, that page is gonna blow up. I was like, Nettie is gonna have so much content on there that I was like, it's gonna be insane. And then I think like maybe like a week later, I like stumbled upon your page, India, and like it was just like, I was like amazing, because I was like, I don't have the time or the patience to do that right now. I was like, and I give so much credit. I was gonna say, if you guys don't know, to the audience, the science pages that they run is a combination of of science like posts, as well as like life posts that are happening throughout too. So the amount of work that goes into that content is ridiculous. Like I feel like half the time like watching them, I'm like, I can barely turn on my computer, and like these 2 hours like are making amazing online content, and I'm like, so impressed.
What's funny is that, so I don't know if you guys remember at the beginning of the pandemic, Love is Blind was like the show on Netflix. And so just like a little tidbit, right? So Lauren and Cam were my favorite couple. And whenever Lauren like would talk, it would always say content creator. And I'm like, what is a content creator? What do they even do? Like how does she get paid for that? And I would literally Google it and ask my friends to be like, how does a content creator get paid? Like, what is this? Months later, I've become a content creator. Like, how crazy is that?
Honestly, that show was great. But 2, yes, no, it's wild. You guys honestly should get paid for the pages that you run, because like they're just like the professional level. It's like, I know like even my sister, who is like not the biggest science person, Nettie knows, she's like 12. She's like, I can read Nettie's page, it's fine. And I'm like, yes, I know you can. Like, she loves the stuff that you guys post, so you're reaching a much younger audience. So speaking of successful science communication, audience, I'm just going to keep asking questions if you guys don't have questions. So if you want to ask something, drop it in and I will read it. But if not, I have a list of questions and I'm just going to keep going off of that. So both of you run extremely successful science communication Instagram accounts. And as you both said, you only started them like a year ago in the beginning of the pandemic. Is there a reason, I know that India, you like talked about this like briefly, but is there like a reason why you guys chose to start them like during like your graduate school program? Like what was like the push?
So I don't think graduate school was the push, actually. I think it was COVID and the pandemic. So what I realized over the time of the pandemic was, one, I spent way too much time on my phone, and I was just like doom scrolling, like refreshing every 2 seconds. So I'm like, I should be doing something with this. I just don't know what. But what the pandemic also revealed was that, the average person didn't really know what scientists did. And also that science wasn't accessible to people that looked like me. So I just saw an opportunity to like start my own page. And again, I didn't know what a content creator was. I didn't know of any of the scientist women that I follow now. I had no idea. I thought I was doing something brand new, unheard of, which is like kind of sounds naive now I think about it. Like, you're not doing anything crazy. You're not doing anything like brand new. But it wasn't until I made the page that Instagram started to recommend people for me to follow. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a whole world of Instagram that I've never even heard of. Like, all these people are doing this and this is so cool. So I think I played around with a couple different ideas when I started of like, what should I really talk about? What should I really do? And every couple weeks, I still reevaluate of like what kind of content I want to create in the future. But I think what really pushed me to start was to make science like digestible for everyone to understand, because at the time everyone was confused. Like, do we wear a mask? Do we not? Does it help? Does it not? Or, do you stand within 6 feet, or is it only for 15 minutes? Or why do we do this? And why do we do that? So I kind of wanted to make my life as a scientist more transparent so that people could understand like why the restrictions were changing, why like everything around COVID was like so kind of ambiguous for a while, and then like cleared up with, science and data and all those things. So that's kind of like why I got started initially. And then as Black Lives Matter movement happened, I was like, oh, I definitely need to start talking about like stuff for minorities, because I rarely see any minority scientists on Instagram. Like I don't see anyone at all. So I need to start talking about this and like shining some light on it. So since then, my page has now focused to more of like minorities, Black people, and just like any kind of like current news and tying it into what I've experienced in my life, and just trying to bring it all together. So I kind of encompass a lot of different topics, but I try to keep it relevant to my audience as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to let India be on this screen and not hype her up. Okay, she also has started her page, but y'all, she also has merchandise. Oh, it's not a. Oh,
I was gonna say I've seen your merchandise. I really like it.
Thank you.
I have my glass right here.
STEM queens.
Because I'm a STEM queen. Okay, so she makes wine glasses and everything else. So yeah, she's amazing and similar. I actually want to start my fall of my second year when I was taking quals and I didn't pass my first time. And I was like, you know what? If you need to pause something, you know, if you're juggling a lot, pause something. You know, it's okay. And I had talked to I had an advisor for like how to, you know, make my page. Who's like what she's saying, like who's my audience, who I want to reach. And mine was definitely focused on minority, younger students, or even my peers. But like she said, there's not really that many of us. It seems like a lot of us when we're like, you know, tagging each other, but in the grand scheme of comparing to like my white peers, it's no comparison. So it's great to have this space, but definitely making sure we get our voice out there. And I think something that India touched on is that intersectionality. We're not just scientists. I'm also a Black woman who had to deal with, you know, the death of George Floyd and everything else that was going on last summer. So I think we both use our platform to say, hey, we're in lab, but also I was going to a protest right after lab, you know, like just trying to make everything happen. I think I got my push to start the page, like again, definitely the pandemic. On my other page, I did a video about COVID and like what was going on. I love statistics. And so I made a video. I talked about how I think at that time there was a lot of models going around. People didn't understand what models were. Like the layperson didn't get, oh, why am I staying indoors? Or like, what's transmission rate? So I just broke it down in Excel, like put in a few little equations. And I said, here's what happened if we stay indoors and you can't transmit. Here's what's happened if we use a mask or whatever it was, you know, at that time period. And people were like, Nettie, that made so much sense. Like, we want more. And I'm like, but people want more. Okay. So, you know, then I talk to my friends, you know, I usually have like a board of directors of my friends before I make any move. I'm like, what do y'all think? They're like, Nettie, go for it. Like, you have personality for it. People can use your voice to like help others. So that's how I got my push. Like India said, just wanted to get word out there about COVID, like what to do, at least from my perspective, what I thought based on CDC data is I think scientists, we can really digest some information very quickly. Like I can read a paper now. I'm like, oh, that's what the result was. And my friend might be like, I didn't know what happened. I'm like, that's where I come in here. So I just want to make it easier to digest this information from CDC or FDA, make sure people understand what these regulations mean to them and their families. Even now, I know we had like a big vaccine, you know, battles a lot on Instagram. You know, just like, let's share the most positive information or just the real results, okay? There's no like sugarcoating. Yeah, there were some people that still got it or 60% versus 90%, but making sure people have the best resources was a key part of my page. So COVID, yeah, definitely got me started again, but now just making sure everyone has access to information and knows what like science is like, because my friends think I'm like at a computer all day, but no, I'm in the lab on my computer. Sometimes I'm at lunch. No, I don't work 8 to 5. Sometimes Nettie works 2 hours a day and then goes with her mom to get her nails done. So, you know, my days are very various, but that's the grad student lifestyle. You know, we don't have a set schedule. We do what we need to do, hit our deliverables, and then the rest is like having fun. So I just like to show that we're not just scientists in the lab. We're all of it. You know, we hang out with our friends, go grab drinks. We do it all. So that's why the page is what the page is now.
And Nettie had an interview with Dr. Fauci. Talk about that.
Nettie knows. My mom called me up going, Nettie? She was like, I love Nettie. She was like, can she get my number? And I was like, oh my God, Mom.
I'm still trying. He doesn't have an Instagram. If he did, he probably would have reached back out. He only has a Twitter. And I need to make my Twitter, but I can get him and get in contact with him. I can.
Well, Nettie knows my mom.
Just for your mom.
Love her forever. She like specifically called me up and was like, I love Nettie. She was like, she was like, that question, perfect. As I was going to say, something that you both honestly mentioned was like being a resource though for your community and like showing that you're like not only a scientist. And I know that like you both have done a lot of work with that. and like reaching out to like the greater just like underrepresented community as well. Like Nettie, I know like you like did a lot of stuff for like Latin American like engineering week and everything, and like Hispanic engineers, which like thank you for that one, because like I got to see like a whole bunch of other Hispanic engineers that like I don't normally get to see, which was really great. But just like really utilizing like that connection to like show that we're human and that like there are other people like doing these things, I think is something that like, people like really appreciate, and it's not something that they really think about when they hear scientists and think like white male. It's like this is not the image of the scientists that they think. So I do think that you guys are doing a really great job just like reinventing that image there. I do have more questions. Oh, perfect. I was going to say, I see a question just came up, so I will hold off on my other questions. But we have a question from Hayden, who says, so grateful. Those who do all this extra work to make science accessible, often for free. Have you got any pushback from bosses, advisors, or administration from taking time from your lab work to do it? And how did you deal?
I think I can start us off here. I chuckle because I have the best advisors. I have two, by the way. I'm co-advised, and I keep them very informed about what I'm doing. And they're both all for it because they believe in like, just sharing what's going on. One of my advisors, we do 3D printing, and he knows like the sexy science. So he's done photo shoots and everything. Like we get on like, they've been like our local network sometimes because we help with patient surgeries at one of our local hospitals for children. And so he's like, no, people need to know like what's going on. So, just make sure like it's not any of our, proprietary data, but go ahead. It doesn't take too much of my time, like while I'm in lab. I might just be recording while I'm in lab, but I'm doing a certificate program right now. So I'm taking like another 6 hours out of lab right now. They don't mind it. They're just like, if this is going to help your career, that's what we're here for. Not just you being our, worker bee and getting us data, but you need to be developing yourself as well. And I can't say every advisor at Georgia Tech or Emory is like that. I just have two that all the kind of students that have graduated don't always go into academia. They've gone to different science policy, regulation, or different avenues. So they understand like I'm a complete person, not just a student. And I told them from day one, I was like, I want to do science policy. I need to be doing these things to help Nettie progress. And I think having that open conversation was the key for me. I'm not scared to have that conversation because at the end of the day, if I don't have it, they're confused about why I didn't get this data done. Well, I'm trying to record and make these posts. But that's how I dealt with it. And that's how I continue to deal with it. Like when I want to go somewhere, I went to a policy conference in DC my first year. I told them I'm applying. They said, all right, you need anything? And I said, no, I got a scholarship, so I'm gonna go. And they said, all right, have fun, take good notes, and do what you have to do. So I think in the day, this degree is about me, not just about them.
Yeah, I wish I had the same experience. So I have gotten pushback from not necessarily admin or like advisors, but just from scientists actually in my community. So whether it be like in a university or on my actual page. And there was a time that as scientists, like we are very detailed oriented people, and that I understand. But a lot of times when you're doing science communication, you're like, generalizing and making like your information like more digestible, which is what I did on one of my posts. And there was some drama that came out of it essentially. And at that point, I reevaluated what I was doing. Like, what was I doing science communication for? What was my page about? And what did I want it to be about? So it did honestly hurt my feelings for a bit that, that type of like pushback came from people that I trusted and respected. But ultimately I decided that, like Nettie said, my degree is for me. It's not for anyone else. And I'm not here to please anyone else, especially the people like I am the only like Black person in my department. So if my page isn't made for non-Black people, then I'm just not going to, try to appease you on my page. That's not my job. So what I ultimately came to the conclusion of was that, my page is for my community, for, Black people. And if that's not something that, they're willing to be open about or, want me to do, then that's fine. They don't have to follow me, but I'm going to keep doing what I think I'm doing and what I'm doing best. So it did not stop me. It did though for a couple days. I'm not going to lie. It did. But yeah, I think I just had to think back to my why, and like, why did I start this in the first place, and what was my goal? And my goal is to make science accessible, right? So if I only talk to scientists about science, it's not actually going to get to the public. No one's going to know about it, and we're not going to move forward as a society. So I think also what comes along with science communication, though, is knowing that you're going to make mistakes, especially if you're talking about something that is technical. Because, you know, scientists will see what you're talking about, and people will accept that as truth because they may not know, or they may not know how to read data, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So I have, like, I guess, adjusted some of my content to be a little bit more focused on certain things. But ultimately, it did not stop me, and I am still here and still thriving. So, yeah.
I do want to add to what India said about, like, you got to be yourself. People won't understand you. And that's something I've had to realize recently. Like, someone even judged the way I do my page as well. So just be yourself. No one's newer than you. And people, I don't think people all understand that we can be scientists, run pages, still hang out with our friends, all of that. So just keep being yourself and do what you have to do. People always be on the outside looking in.
Yeah. Oh, I do want to add though too, in terms of like shooting content and stuff. I like actually a morning person. So I do all of my science in the morning, and then anything else that I consider fun, I do after in the afternoon. So a lot of my content is like batched, and I like shoot on the weekends, or, you know, in the afternoons or evenings or whatever. So I have allowed it to, I've worked my schedule around shooting content, and most of my posts are planned, although there are some days where I'm just like in my feelings and I'm like, I'm going to post about this. And I do that. So in general, it hasn't really taken away from my studies. And it also helps that I'm not taking classes anymore. So I don't think the time has really affected like my PhD studies.
Say those are all really good points, and clearly like spurred like a whole bunch of other questions off of like some of those points that you made. So somebody said, like, what are some of the ways to encourage peers in STEM to make their work more accessible, especially when there's this sort of superiority that some scientists feel they'd lose if they made it accessible to the general public?
Wow, superiority. That must be a privilege to have. I feel like I have no superiority over my science. Like, if I know something, I want to share it with the world. Like, I couldn't even fathom saying, let me just hold this to myself. I guess my advice for sharing, see what you're passionate about. That's what I tell most people, like with different avenues, like whether starting a business or whatever. What makes Nettie like happy in the morning? Like, I like tissue generation and biomaterials. Like, I could talk you down all day. One time I was talking to my friend, they're like, Nettie, stop, I get it. I like it. You know? Figure out what you like. And there's platforms that help you. Like, I know, India, you also use Canva. Like, that's our site. You know, there's templates out there to help you make your content. BioRender, even there's a site called BioRender for if it's like more technical. They have cells, they have hydrogels, whatever you need. But definitely like figure out what you want to do and like what you want to share. And there will be a community to help you and support you. It might not always be like your close friends, but like I've made a whole community through this like Black Women Science Network, not just Black women, just Science Network. People that will comment on every one of my posts and say, Nettie, you got this, keep going. Or even somebody that be like, oh girl, you messed up like that one letter on that. I said, okay, thanks, I'll take it down and put it back up. So share what makes you passionate, because it comes through in the post. Like I can tell when like India's feeling a post, like she puts all these gifts and these pictures. I'm like, she really spent some time on that one. She liked it. And I think people can tell too, when you spend time and you like what you're doing, not just, oh, let me just tell them tissue regeneration will save the world, but let me tell you why. You know, people might lose their body parts in war, or children are born without some of their ears and noses, and we can help build them back, you know, instead of just saying, hey, it will help, I guess. You know, there's a way to like communicate that. And I think that's what we're both trying to do on our platforms.
Yeah. So I kind of see it as people, if they wanted to share, they would, right? So I can't convince someone or make someone do something that they just don't want to do. And I think the superiority complex that exists in academia, I don't like it. I really don't. But to the people that do feel that way, if I were to try to convince them, I would just tell them, like, you know, if you keep your science to yourself, who is going to benefit from it? You know, no one is going to benefit from your science if only you know about it. So, you know, talking to other people about what you're doing, even if it's, you know, your grandma at Easter dinner or, you know, whoever it may be, like, is that initial steps to making your science accessible. I think the pandemic has displayed that because there's so much research on, you know, it's everything. Like, you know, you can type in anything and find research on it, and, you know, into PubMed or, you know, look at Google Scholar and find all these papers. But since people aren't trained in science, like, it's not going to be helpful for them. And, you know, since you have those tools to help people, why wouldn't you want to help them? But I do know people that just don't want to help people, right? They think that, you know, since they spend all the time learning how to, you know, learning the skill set and, you know, learning how to do the science, that they are the only ones that have, I guess, earned the right to know about it. So, and that's unfortunate. It really is. And that's what is keeping science inaccessible, in my opinion. But yes, I would say just don't try to force people to do something they're not quite ready yet to do. And do what you feel is right.
I think those are some great points, because you're right. Like, I mean, like, none of my family has any idea what I do, but it's like I can just be like, I work on batteries, and they're like, cool, sounds great. Like, we'll know eventually, we'll see what you're doing. So even something like that, I feel like it's just like a little bit easier, because then I know, like, my grandparents will look up stuff about them and they'll like text me questions. Is this why my phone's dying faster? Probably.
I think this helps us in the end, though. Like, I feel like I have to explain mine so much and to different levels. Like, I feel like I know my research like back of my hand now. Like, I can explain anything, any part of it based on, you know, me, you know, putting up posts or talking to my grandparents. Like, I give my parents, I'm like, what is my research on? They both have like their one-liners. Like, when I was in undergrad, I worked on like wound healing applications. So mine was like, she's working on antimicrobial band-aids to help heal the like skin underneath. I said, that's it. And like they know mine now too. They're like the TMJ, and I said, that's it. So I think it really helps us as we share information. You'll know how to communicate different audiences, and even just for yourself. I feel like I can do a call all over again and just ace it, you know, easily.
All right. Well, I was going to say, I don't know if I would go that far.
You know what? I take it back. Don't put me back in that room.
You give people ideas.
Let me move my board.
Call again, but honestly, it's such an important skill to have. So for everybody in the audience, even if you decide that you don't want to go into STEM, being able to explain things to like any type of audience that you are, regardless of the subject, it will come in handy way more often than you would think that it would. So definitely really great points. And I recommend you checking out some of their posts so that you can get an idea on how to do that. Oh goodness, there were more that came in like when I wasn't looking. So somebody said, do you have any advice about how to talk to family members who are minority immigrants without education about getting vaccines? To clarify, the family member believes that the new vaccines might change their DNA. I'm assuming because it's an mRNA vaccine. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. It's tough. I'm not going to say it's easy. I would use analogies. Like one of mine is usually I try to go to bakings. I like to bake, like maybe like when you're putting the ingredients together and you bake it, maybe the cake is your DNA, the mRNA is the frosting. So like you can't change the cake again. Like we can change the frosting out, wipe it off. And that's what we're doing. We're putting new frosting, making new proteins to help battle, the virus, but the cake can't be undone. You can't get back your egg, your milk, your flour. It's done. So nothing can change your DNA. I would probably just try using an analogy like that or whatever. I try to use analogies for what I know somebody likes. So if you're a cheerleader, I could try to change it to like something about yelling or something. But try to keep it as base level as possible. Analogies are your best friends. And even if you do have the resources to like look at some of the data, like, hey, most people that got it 100% haven't gotten again, or whatever the facts may be. I think that helps people too, because I know a lot of times, I think only the worst cases are shared, like the nurse that fell out. Well, she always falls out. She's she doesn't do well with needles. But like not all the positives are shared. Like most of my friends are vaccine, but a lot of us aren't sharing that yet because I want to make sure everyone has access first. But you know, if only the negatives are shared, we don't know about the positives. And most of the world right now is the positives. There's rarely any like negative side effects. So try to share more of like here's the positive stats. You know, maybe your arm did hurt a little bit after, but tell the truth and like just make sure they understand what's going on. You know, Pfizer versus Moderna versus J&J at the most basic level. It's not going to be easy. I've had so many conversations with my family members, especially being Black in America. So just take your time. It won't be maybe a one conversation deal. Maybe come back to it. Get other family members involved in the conversations as well.
Yeah, I would echo that in that I use a lot of analogies to communicate science to my own family members. So I would say my family members are also hesitant about the vaccine as well. And my analogy that I use was I guess it's a figure of speech. Like, so if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. But if you teach a man a fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. So I kind of use the vaccine in that example because, you know, the mRNA will teach you how to fish, like, and it'll be able to protect your body for any of the vaccine for any of the potential, you know, viral interactions. So when I said it like that, people were like, oh, okay. So the mRNA is teaching you how to, okay, now I get it. But even then, like people weren't quite convinced. Like they were like, oh, that's like a good concept, but like, I don't really know. So what I try to do is share other resources that I know. So like podcasts, or like posts or just like other things that are media based, that specifically represent, you know, that person. So I always share a lot of podcasts with my dad, and it's podcasters that are Black that can, you know, explain to him in different ways, you know, how the vaccine is good or bad or, you know, any science thing. He really relates to it because he's like, oh, these people like know what I'm feeling and like also are transparent about how they're feeling. So I think also acknowledging, you know, the concerns that your family member may have is very, very important. Because if people understand, or if you express that you understand why someone is hesitant, then they will, you know, take in your information with more of an open mind and be like, this person is, you know, listening to me and knows where I'm coming from, but they have this information to share with me. And, you know, both, I try to do a mix of like really good and then like, you know, also some side effects potential, you know, so it's right. Informative, but also, you know, can shine light on some of the good things that have come with the vaccine. But again, not forcing anyone to do what they aren't comfortable with, or not shaming anyone about it, because no one likes to be shamed or yelled at into doing something that they don't want to do. It makes them want to do it even less.
So to whoever that is, I hope that helped answer your question. Those were some really great tips. So hopefully you're able to do that with your family member. And they learn a little bit about what the vaccine is. We got another question from Natalie. She said, how did you guys come to the decision to go to grad school if you knew that you didn't want to pursue a career in academia? And how has grad school helped you in pursuing your goals?
Okay. So since I kind of was turned off to the idea of grad school and then I came here anyway, I decided to make the best of it because it is, you know, a whole 5 to 7 years of my life. When I knew coming in that I did not want to be in academia, and I made that very clear to my advisors, like while I was recruiting, I'm like, hey, I don't want anything to do with academia. Don't try to convince me. It's not for me. And they were like, okay, you know, these are other things. So I think with my platform, I have started to, I will say, discover other jobs that I can do with a PhD. Although I will say it was not clear when I came in as a first year graduate student what I was going to do. But this journey is very much so a journey and figuring out what I want to do with my life and, you know, where I want to take it. So I won't say set in stone, I'm going to do X, you know, because I really just don't know. But I think the skills, and Nettie talked about this before, that the skills that you learn from grad school are so much more translatable than what you think. So even though I may not be a bench scientist, I will not be a bench scientist. I have discovered that. I will not be doing any more assays when graduate school is done, but learning like communication style, work-life balance, learning how to manage different projects, learning how to talk to different people, all of those things that you do on a day-to-day basis. Like I even have to buy resources for the lab and like organize them and do all that stuff. So like that stuff does come in handy and comes along, unfortunately, with being in graduate school. But you can still use it when you go off to whatever job you want to do.
Yeah, I think I still came because I knew it was my senior year of undergrad when I was applying for schools. And I went to a conference and I was hearing about this AAAS. AAAS is the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And so many people, they were coming to speak to us, of course. They did this program in science policy. It's a fellowship through that program, AAAS. And it's a year long, but you have to have your PhD. And I was like, okay, so I already knew I wanted a PhD, but I'm like, so I need it to get to that too. So I was like, why not? But also fundamentally, my family is really big on education. I think, especially being Black in the United States, we haven't always had access to education. So they're big on no one can take that from you. Like you could be arrested and in jail. No one can take what you have in your mind from you. So I've always just wanted to get more education. And I always knew I had the ability to learn more just based on the way I was. Like I like science. So that's why I still came. So like India said, there's so many skills you learn. And it's not just about the research to me, like getting up certificates, meeting people. I'm an SGA, so I get to have so many connections around the state. You can really like level up in grad school, like be able to use your like platform, science communication, just learn more, meet people. It's all of that has factored into like why I'm still here. Like I definitely could have left, like got a master's and left or just left, But I actually enjoy my research. I like my advisors, my friends. And hopefully this is a great stepping stone to my next like career as like a science politician or whatever that name may be.
I was gonna say, I feel like you guys are like especially like really great for this because I know that a lot of people marked off that they were like, grad school sounds interesting, but I don't think academia is for me. So like seeing that both of you are like, hell no. I will not work at a bench for the rest of my life, which I feel you so much. You're like, I do not want to go into academia because honestly, it is an ivory tower. It is very hard to get involved with, especially.
It is, and I don't know at your school, but like in my program, over 70% of people don't stay in academia. Like, so now they're trying to make sure they're developing other career choices because most of us aren't going into being professors. Like the fact that postdocs get paid, what, $20K more than us as grad students, but I'm like, you have a whole PhD, you're getting paid $50,000. I'm being played.
No, really.
What? That should at least be 70. Come on now. So like, I don't think it literally makes sense to like do certain things. Like, so postdoc, for anyone that doesn't know, that's the next step after PhD to become a professor. So it's like basically getting more research, no classes. You're just in a lab doing research pretty much. And then you're applying for, assistant professorships. Even that, apparently that like right now, there's too many postdoc positions for how many assistant professor positions open up. So it's already like, that doesn't make sense. So something has to change for people to actually do in academia. It's still not the best, like it's a bottleneck, which makes no sense. So I think looking realistically too, I think other routes, like do research in a not corporate lab, but like just a research lab. It doesn't always have to be like just in an academic lab. There are other research choices that make more money. Mm-hmm. Way more money.
Very true. Yeah, honestly, like you see those postdocs and they have like long, crazy hours and they're pushing out publications and then you see how much they're getting paid. And it's like, you guys have like all this other stuff going on. Like you already did what so many of us are sitting here going, my God, like I am still doing my PhD. Like they already did it and they're still, it's like a half step. It doesn't even feel like a full step.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's refreshing. I feel like for a lot of people to see that you're not just saying like, yeah, I'm going to do academia. Cause honestly, so many people say that. And like, that's not realistically like what they're going to go do or what they want to go and do. So refreshing that you're like, just no. Like,
yeah, it couldn't be me. That it's gonna. And I've actually been asked like, oh, what are you doing for your postdoc last year? And I was like, I'm not. No, don't even. If I have to apply this early and at the time I was a second year, if I have to start applying for a postdoc as a second year graduate student, there is no way you will find me doing any of that. No, thank you.
Mm-mm.
I was going to say, because Nettie knows when we met in undergrad, I was like, heck yeah, I'm going to be a professor. I'm going to work at a university. First year grad school, I was like, hell no. It's like, couldn't pay me, could not ask me to do so. I was like, I was like, this was very glorified in my head of what it was. And like the reality of the situation is just, it just isn't it. It's just
The door is open for me. Like it's a slight crack because I really love teaching my undergrads and I enjoy TAing. But I'm like, the steps to get there though, I don't think it's fruitful and worth it. Like I do enjoy like showing them experiments, seeing that aha moment in their heads. It's beautiful, like watching my undergrad grow this past year. But I'm like, no. I won't allow myself to be played like that. Like, no.
So I'm like that guest lecture position while I like have another like an actual job.
That's
is
the
like
thing.
very appealing. I was like, you
Right.
could still teach, but I can like have a real
That's it.
yeah. That's
Invite me in.
you got it. I'm gonna be like if you take me, you have to take Nettie. It's like I'm sorry, package deal. I'm sure they'll go for it. It'll just be like a wide variety of things that we could potentially teach. Materials engineering, biomedical engineering. There's like a whole slew. They relate. It'll be fine. But let me pull up some of the other questions that I got DM'd while we were discussing the horrors of doing academia. So somebody asked, do you think that or I guess this one actually covers this other one too. So they said there's been a big push for graduate students especially to participate more in or actively get involved in science communication of some kind, any kind. Like I'm assuming it'd be like teaching, like outreach, whatever it is. Do you think these efforts are beneficial for the grad school experience?
I think it depends. So for one thing, I haven't experienced a personal push for science communication. I mean, I've done it on my own, but you know, my advisors are telling me you need to go do outreach. So I haven't experienced that, but I do think it's beneficial depending on what you want to do. So again, I want to go into science communication, so I have a whole platform to like essentially practice before I do it, you know, on a real world, I guess you could say. But if you're doing something like our program does do like a lot of outreach stuff where you don't necessarily get to talk to the kids, but you like, I don't know, staple papers or like do like, you know, like mindless kind of work. That doesn't seem helpful to me. And I wouldn't even consider that to be science communication. Yes, it's outreach. Yes, it's volunteer. But if you're not actually talking about your science, then I don't think it's very helpful. I think doing outreach that's like actually geared towards like what you either work on or just like basic science in general is beneficial for you. But you also have to think about, you know, graduate school or whatever level you're at, like, you know, that comes first. So this kind of ties back into questions like, how do you manage both? I think ultimately you think about like, what do you want to do as your own career and how can you balance that with like, you know, your outreach or volunteer work or even, you know, starting your own platform. So it kind of just depends on like, what do you want personally and work towards what you want for yourself.
Yeah, I agree with India. I haven't really seen the push for, you know, people getting involved in science communication. I think I've seen more opportunities, maybe like through like different agencies, FDA or AAAS or whatever. I'd agree to that. But like on the, I think like the school or like department front, I've seen more like people making sure students have the opportunity to do outreach. If anything, like Georgia Tech, they do a good amount of outreach. I've done some of their programs or working with kids in the Atlanta area, or even I've gone up to different YMCAs and done some science experiments like at these outdoor camps. Like one summer I was making like the alginate beads. We did this differentiation game. We made a lung model using like a Coca-Cola bottle and like balloons and straws. So like doing fun stuff like that so the kids see like, oh, this is science, like, and here's why it works. And like also those aha moments with the kids, just so beautiful, just seeing they understand like why something works. So I think like outreach like that was teaching hands-on, not just stapling papers and, you know, organizing, but I developed lesson plans. Like that helped me see like how to structure stuff to where like with my undergrads, now I make their lesson plans like, oh, Leela, this is what you're doing this week. here's your outcomes. I need you to analyze this data and tell me why it makes sense or why it doesn't make sense, you know? So I think outreach can help you in so many ways. As a person, you know, just seeing tiny humans, you know, doing their science, or even like as a grad student, learning how to communicate your science to smaller audiences, getting help from others, managing a team, developing, like I said, those lesson plans. So I think anyone that wants to develop themselves more as a researcher, a person, outreach is the way to go. I think there's never like any pitfalls to doing more outreach. I think it is a lot of time management. At one point, I was driving like an hour up to like OMCA, doing the experiment for 4 hours, driving back. So like I tell my advisors, I'm not here on Wednesdays really. I'm driving around, doing experiments. They're okay with it. It was a summer. You get a lot of work done in the summer, so students aren't like undergrads aren't around or whatever. So I think again that communication to your advisors is very important when you're doing outreach. I also spent my weekends at Tech doing outreach too, so they know like where's Nettie, you know, like what is she doing on her free time. And even on my research updates, I say, hey, I taught the kids how to do this roller coaster activity with the marble. So I think outreach is great. Like it keeps me going because it makes me see the future, and that's my motivation. Like this degree really isn't about Nettie; it's about the next Netties or Indias and Maggies that they can know that they can do it too. And so seeing the youth while I'm in it, even though it might be a hard week, I'm like, I get to see the kids this weekend, you know, see their smiling faces, and they remind me like, this is what I'm doing it for. So it's also great motivation to do outreach.
And so those are, yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, clearly we agree that our third day is all about outreach. So if you are a high school student in the audience, the third day is for you, and it's just outreach all day. You can meet some really great people. That was just the plug for the third day. Anyway, just like a small one, you know, nothing big. But no, I think, thank you, Sarah. But no, I definitely think that you guys are so right. I don't necessarily know if like they're like in your face that you have to do it, but like just seeing the fact that there's all these new opportunities to get out there, or like deciding if it's worth it for you, like prioritizing like what you want to do and everything. And that being like for some people doing outreach or like doing science communication, like you both are reaching like the younger audience and like a greater audience, whether it be in person or virtually or whatever. And I do think that you guys have like a huge impact and like clearly a big impact on your community. So it's like a great thing, or a great dynamic that you have in your work. So like it clearly it works for you guys. Like you're doing great things. I do want to know, we have 4 minutes left. So if anybody has a question and wants to ask it, now's the time, because if not, I'm just gonna ask the other questions that came in my DM and I'll ignore yours. All right. So I guess last question / or like parting words, like whatever, because we've kind of answered this in like many different ways. Do you think grad school, or just like where you are in life in general, like has your view of success or what you consider success altered or like changed in any way?
I would say absolutely, 100%. Yes. I'll try to keep it short. But so before graduate school, I was more of a like, you know, check these boxes kind of person. Like, you know, you have to do this thing, you have to get this grade, you have to do this activity, and, you know, check it down the row. In graduate school, you don't really have a lot of check boxes. And if you do, they don't really come that fast because science takes a very long time. So it took me a lot to adjust to that. And now I've kind of readjusted my standards to be like, am I happy? Check. And that's it. So I have definitely reevaluated how I see success. I tend to be hard on myself, especially when it comes to like my platform. I'm like, oh, this post didn't do as well as I thought it would be. But ultimately, I'm like, people read it and like it, and they just kept scrolling, whatever. I feel good about it. Check. So, okay, I'm going to stop.
I would absolutely agree. I think mine started when I was applying. So I didn't think I'd get into tech and Emory, even though like there was a connection through UGA where I went undergrad. But they told me, they're like, Nettie, you had the research. Of course, your grades or your GRE were not great, but you're a holistic person. Like you were involved in undergrad, you did outreach, like you were involved in your church or whatever. And it just made me see like, I was successful. I was like, yeah, I didn't have the highest grades or highest GRE, but I was successful for Nettie. Like, and I think that's where my success is like, did you do the best that Nettie could do? And I remember my parents said that all growing up. If you did Nettie's best and you got that 78 on the test, then that's your A, you know? So like, of course, try to do better, you know, grade wise, but like, all we can do is our best. And I think seeing that success, like India said, like, yeah, that post got that many likes, but it's okay. Whoever liked it, liked it. And so it helped one more person. And I think that's what my line sisters, when I started the page, I'm like, if it helps one girl reach out to me, I'm done. And like a girl reached out the first week and I said, I can stop the page now. You know, close it out. And since then, like each week a new girl, like, hey, do you mind just telling me? I'm like, of course. So like, I think my success is just being able to help people and just make sure Nettie's healthy. Like my mental and physical health is important because health is wealth. Okay. And that's success to me. You know, forget the experiments, health is wealth.
Oh, really? It's like, it's always at a point where I'm like, you know, I'm just going to stop being me queen and no one will notice. It'll be fine. And then that next morning I wake up to a DM. Hey, I'm really interested in science. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And like, I keep doing it. So it always happens like that every single time.
You guys are great. Honestly, like, I think what you said is it's so true. So many people clearly had a great time, as Elia said, like 100% sipping on this wisdom. So clearly it's like you guys got like so many more like DMs just now. So sorry, you can't stop your pages. They have to keep going.
Okay.
I guess. No, okay. I got to post that up for tomorrow. So don't forget to look at it.
I was going to say, I really liked your sustainability post today. I was like, yes, these are good points. That's what I was doing during lunch. So I was going to say, I do want to thank you guys again, honestly, for being here and checking your DMs, because that is how we set up this presentation in the first place. So we're really appreciative. And I know that the committee was so excited. The people signing up like marked off that you guys were like something that they were really excited to see and like hear from. So I'm just really grateful that you were here, and thank you for taking the time from the East Coast, people from the East Coast, to come and talk to us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah. So for everybody else, I guess that's here. We're about to start we're about to start tea time. So jump in the community rooms. There are community rooms for literally like everything. So like we have Black in STEM, we have Latinas in STEM. If you're an international student, LGBTQ, jump in one of those rooms. If you don't want to jump in a community room and you just like want to chill and like meet new people, jump in the tea time. You can do that as well. Yes, those are their tags. Check them out on Instagram. Guarantee you will love their posts. But thank you again so much for coming. Honestly, this was great. And I mean, you'll hear from us soon. Like we'll reach out soon, promise. Yeah, but thank you.
All right, awesome.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.